Hi everyone, in this lesson we're going to go over digestive accessory organs. These are organs that are not part of the main GI tract. They are not the hollow tube that food passes through, but they add elements to the hollow tube of your mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and it's going to add stuff to that GI tract organs tube to aid and facilitate digestion. So the accessory organs we're going to go over is the tongue, the liver, the gallbladder, the salivary glands, as well as the pancreas. Actually, we're not going to go over the tongue so much, but we are going to go over the teeth a little bit. So, this is key vocab we're going to go over, and we're going to go over the function and the stuff produced by these key accessory organs. Now, what makes an accessory organ an accessory organ? Basically, it's not a hollow tube organ. Food does not pass through that accessory organ, but the accessory organ can be inside or on one edge of the GI tract organ. They may aid in mechanical digestion, but a lot of the accessory organs we're going to go over contribute chemicals or enzymes that help aid that process. There's a missing word there. Most accessory organs contribute chemicals or enzymes or help that aid digestion. When I talk about enzymes, I'm talking particularly about digestive enzymes whose main job is to break chemical bonds in larger molecules to turn them into smaller molecules. All right, so there's two main divisions of the digestive system like we've talked about. We went over GI tract or alimentary canal on the last lesson. In this lesson, we're going to go over the accessory organs. There are other accessory organs than this list. I'm going to go over these ones only, though. For example, a tongue would be considered an accessory organ in your mouth in addition to the teeth and tongue. All right, so we're going to go over the two main areas that receive accessory organ material or accessory organ assistance, the mouth and the small intestine. So the mouth, the things that aid in the creation of a bolus in your mouth are your teeth as well as your salivary gland. You can also throw tongue in there as well. But these organs help assist your mouth for the digestion process, but they're not the hollow tube itself that food passes through. Your teeth don't count as a main organ because there's no tube, hollow hole in your teeth that food will go into that tube. It doesn't. It's just on one edge of your mouth to help chomp down. So your teeth helps doing the grinding and tearing process. Your salivary glands actually inject saliva in all crevices of your mouth to help produce the material that helps soften food and actually has enzymes in it that help aid chemical digestion. So what are those things? Well, one big part of your salivary gland is it provides a lot of water to help soften up the food that's coming into your mouth. But another major player in there is, even though it doesn't seem significant, it's less than 1% of saliva, that enzyme called amylase, along with the antibodies and mucus, play a pretty huge role in getting your food to change its texture quite a bit. Amylase is a special enzyme that actually breaks down carbohydrate starches. So it'll help break down like chips, crackers will actually start getting really soft thanks to the help of this amylase. So it's really useful for humans when we ate like plants straight from the field and stuff like that before cooking. This amylase really aided humans and our ancestors to allow us to digest food that we're chewing without and soften it quite substantially to get into that bolus. All right. This second major section that receives a lot of aid from accessory organs is your small intestine, particularly your duodenum. So your duodenum or your duodenum is the initial section of your small intestine that is attached to your stomach. So if you recall, we have our stomach, but the tube that's hooking out of your stomach at the end of it, that's the small intestine, the initial part of your small intestine, and we call it the duodenum. That is a section that gets a lot of material from your gallbladder as well as your liver dumped into it, and it mixes with the contents coming out of the stomach. So one of the key things coming into there is something called bile. So bile is a really important liquid chemical. It's actually called bile salts. that emulsifies fat. So it doesn't digest fat. Well, not in terms of the chemical bond, but it does make that fat more accessible for enzymes. So the way it works is it takes the fat. So you probably know that fat will not mix with water. If you put a lot of oil in water, that oil will kind of float on top and refuse to mix into the water. That actually is a big issue because your stomach acid and the chyme in your body is mainly water. Okay? So without bile, the fat will not mix into your chyme, especially in your small intestine. And then because the fat stays separate from everything else, you can't get enzymes into that fat to digest the fat. So what bile is going to do is going to break that fat into tiny drops. And what that's going to effectively do is prevent the oil from separate, or the fat lipid from separating from your stomach acid. Instead, it's going to mix it into the chyme, basically. The chyme that left your stomach and is entering your small intestine is going to all mix up into one smooth mix. And what that bile salt is going to do is, because they're tiny droplets, now you can dump a bunch of enzymes into this chyme, and any enzymes you have, especially for fat, are going to be able to access all of the fat really easily to break it down super quickly. So the bile is actually produced by your liver. So your liver plays a huge role in many, many things, but in particular in the digestive system, it forms bile. Now, that bile can be released directly into the small intestine, as you can see here through this tube, into your duodenum. But in addition to that, it also plays some other roles. So one thing you may not know is your liver. It's actually one of the really large organs in your abdominal cavity. And it actually can store a lot of excess food. So it stores and releases nutrients. So if you have extra glucose in your blood, you can store it as glycogen in your liver. If you have extra vitamins, lipids, or amino acids, which again, amino acids are parts of proteins, if you have excess of any of that, you can actually store it in your liver if you don't have a place to put it in your body. Another thing that your liver does is it plays a role in breakdown of materials coming through your digestive system. So any toxins and stuff like that coming out of your digestive system gets a chance to be passed through your liver and filtered to prevent it from moving into your blood and potentially going to your brain and damaging it and stuff like that. So those are the main roles the liver does in just the digestive system. It plays roles in other places, like your immune system to a degree, and in particular, your cardiovascular system has a liver play a role in there. But we're just going to focus on the digestive system. But the biggest thing it does is produce bile. Now, sometimes it's producing bile, but there's no food in your system. So what are you going to do with that bile? Well, you can stick it in your gallbladder, which is going to store and concentrate that bile so it's extra potent. And then when you eat a really huge meal, you'll have a huge pocket of bile that you can dump into your duodenum to really facilitate and speed up that emulsification, that mixing of fat, so that it can then be broken down. So where do we get the enzymes to break down fat, as well as enzymes to break down other food molecules in your small intestines? Well, some of it is made by your small intestines, but a huge amount of those enzymes are coming out of your pancreas. So your pancreas is this yellow, soft, squishy organ that sits right underneath the stomach. And again, it has tubes to dump its content directly into the duodenum. So one of the big things it does is it has bicarbonate. So bicarbonate is baking soda. If you look at the back of a baking soda carton, it's got calcium bicarbonate or sodium bicarbonate in it. And bicarbonate is the thing that neutralizes acid. So if you mix vinegar with baking soda, the baking soda helps stop the vinegar. In this case, this neutralizes the acid coming out of your stomach. So your stomach has an acidic pH of 2 to 4, and that acid can damage and burn the small intestine. But because your pancreas is making bicarbonate, it neutralizes the acid and brings it back to a neutral pH of 7 to 8, so that everything in your small intestine is at a pH of 7, 8. That's not going to be damaging. In addition to this, the pancreas also makes a bunch of enzymes. So some of these enzymes include trypsin, which is an enzyme that digests protein in the small intestine because pepsin from your stomach won't work anymore. It also makes more amylase to add to the small intestine because the amylase made by your mouth, your salivary glands in your mouth, is no longer active. So this can help add more carbohydrate digestion that is in your small intestine, as well as lipase. Or lipase is the enzyme that actually digests fat molecules into smaller molecules. So bile helps mix it so that lipase from your pancreas can digest it chemically. In addition to that, your pancreas also produces hormones called insulin and glucagon that actually regulate the blood sugar levels. So you may know of insulin. If you're diabetic, you have a hard time controlling your blood sugar, and oftentimes one of the reasons is because your insulin isn't working the way it should. Okay, so this is a summary picture I showed you earlier in the past of the digestive organs, both the GI tract organs as well as accessory organs, kind of like a quick map of it. So again, if you want to, you can print this picture or kind of make your own version of it. I just find it as a good reference, but the lecture, this covers all the stuff that was covered in the lecture. So accessory organs primarily play a major role in providing digestive enzymes to help break the bonds in large food molecules or provide ways for enzymes to access that food. All right. So the teeth in your mouth, while they aren't enzymes, they do help chew your food so that into smaller bits, so that enzymes like the enzymes from your salivary glands, like amylase, are able to access that food better. It also breaks it down into food so that by the time it reaches your stomach and then your small intestine, it'll be able to be accessed better. All right. In addition to that, the salivary glands, besides the amylase, also add other material, and together it's going to help break down the carbohydrates and soften your food a little bit before it enters your GI tract in the pharynx and your esophagus. Now, bile, just be careful. A lot of students tell me bile is a thing that is needed to break the lipids into fatty acids, into smaller molecules, but bile is not the enzyme itself. Bile helps mix fat so that it can be accessed by the enzyme. So bile helps mix the fat into the chyme, but the thing that's actual, which we also called emulsifying, but the thing that actually digests the fat itself is called lipase, and that's from your pancreas. So your pancreas provides the enzyme. Your liver and your liver and gallbladder provide the bile for mixing. Okay? All right. Finally, pretty much if you have an enzyme you need for digestion, while some enzymes are made by your mouth or by your salivary glands in your mouth and in your stomach, which is not accessory gland, but just a GI tract organ, pretty much every enzyme you need to digest food is created by your pancreas. Okay? And your pancreas does a lot of work in digestion. In addition to that, it'll provide bicarbonate to prevent damage from your stomach acid. All right, so that concludes the accessory organs for this section. So move on to any other work you have. Bye.